So now we're live and welcome everybody. We can maybe start with a Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So this morning we're going to look at the awakening factors and how they relate to mindfulness of breathing and how the development of mindfulness leads to the awakening factors. It's the first, mindfulness is the first of the awakening factors. So developing very unremittent light mindfulness makes it an awakening factor. So we'll look at the sutta and some related suttas. Let's see here. And share. So share this document that I've put together with sutta extracts. So what I love about the suttas is, I don't know what, it's like a treasure hunt in a way. We had a park in the picnic in the park the other day, and there were people on a treasure hunt. But this is the real treasures. So you find the interrelated suttas, and then it's almost like putting pieces of a puzzle together also at the same time. But yeah, not just for entertainment, but this is a way of exploring and discovering because of the way the teachings were collected and memorized. Sometimes you fill out one teaching by looking at comparing related teachings. So hopefully this will be, and also if you've read the suttas, you can do it like, now you can do it electronically, searching and getting related suttas. But if you've read the suttas, the mind will also start linking. That's my mind does that. I think, oh, this is related to that sutta, and I look it up and I get more details. But anyway, so we'll start. And this is from the Anapanasati Samyutta, and it's called The Awakening Factors. Would you mind? And here's SN 52.2. This is Bhante Sujato's translation. And when you see mendicants, it might clue you into this is a translation by Bhante Sujato. But other people use that word too. So, but anyway, that's one clue. What I'm telling you, so you don't have to guess. So would you like to read for me, please?
Mendicants. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it's very fruitful and beneficial. And how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated to be very fruitful and beneficial? It's when a mendicant develops mindfulness of breathing together with the awakening factors of mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity, which rely on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripen as letting go. Mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated in this way, is very fruitful and beneficial.
So we're starting out with Anapanasati, and that's one of the vocabularies that might be helpful to have is anapanasati. It's translated as mindfulness, literally mindfulness while breathing in and out, mindfulness during inhalation and exhalation. So that's the literal. And sati is translated in various ways, but the most common way currently is mindfulness. Originally, it was recollection or memory, but we have to remember to direct our attention back to the breathing if we've, or remember to sustain that awareness. So I think that it is a factor, and it's a particular kind of awareness. And then the first of the Bojjhangas are the awakening factors, or the factors of enlightenment. So you can see when you're reading, just keep in mind these Pali terms are translated by different teachers variously. So that's why I keep bringing them in, the different translations in. But the sati, of course, is what we commonly consider translated as mindfulness or awareness. Mindfulness as an element of awakening. Remembering as a factor of enlightenment. So here we have that sati is translated as remembering. And there's a sutta that a monk or a person in particular is inspired by someone who's described of fulfilling the sila samadhi panya, that they're accomplished in virtue, they're accomplished in samadhi or meditation practice or immersion, and they're accomplished in wisdom and panya. So the person is inspired, and the person gets a teaching from that other person, and then they're reflecting on the teaching again and again and again. And this in itself becomes awakening factor or enlightenment factor. And then they were able to proceed in developing the other factors of awakening. So here's an extract from the Anapanasati Sutta. Would you mind reading this for me, please?
Bhikkhus, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness. When the 4 foundations of mindfulness are developed and cultivated, they fulfill the 7 enlightenment factors. When the 7 enlightenment factors are developed and cultivated, they fulfill true knowledge and deliverance.
So this is onward leading to full awakening. The true knowledge and deliverance, or this is a epithet for arhatship, I believe. But it's a gradual path, and it's showing how the mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, so that's over time, and when it's really sustained, it's unremittent mindfulness, then and when you're working with it, also it shows in this sutta, it'll show you in the mindfulness of breathing how it fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the awakening factors, or the enlightenment factors. So this is This is the Satipatthana Sutta extract. This is Bhante Sujato's translation. And so it's speaking about how mindfulness of breathing is kayanusati, or mindfulness of the body. Would you read?
For I say that the in-breaths and the out-breaths are an aspect of the body. Kayesu kayana tarahang bhikkhave evang vadami yadidang asa sa asa sa pasa sa.
Yeah, that's
In and out.
it's in and out.
Yeah.
In and out breathing. Inhale and exhale. So this is Bhante Sujato's note here. And he said here, the Pali here is kayesu kayanyatarang, literally a certain body among bodies. So people who've studied the Satipatthana are used to this. And there's a lot of confusion whether it means that you're actually, when you're breathing, you're aware of the entire body, or it's the breath body, which would be the breath itself. And some people say it's only at one point, and the entire awareness of the entire breath at that point, or some people believe that it's like the whole experience of the breath. You're feeling the breath expanding in the chest and abdomen, and then the whole cycle of breath felt more in the body. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of discussion of what this actually means. And we don't have to debate. I think for some applications in meditation, this full body awareness, even feeling like when there's a really subtle awareness of the whole body that can happen in conjunction to the awareness of the in and out breathing. There's a subtle change in pressure through. So it's just, so it's really grounded in the full body awareness, but your awareness is the breath. Your mindfulness is keyed into the breath. Or it can be just at one spot if it's the mind. It's a more, I don't want to say focused. How do I say? I had another way to describe it. But it's not as diffused. Your attention is if it's just one spot. So you can experiment and see, like sometimes the mind cannot sustain just the awareness of the breath, and it does have to be a little more global. And whatever teacher you're working with, I would just go with the teacher's instruction. If you have specific instructions working with somebody. So Bhante Sujata says what it means is the breath as one of the four material elements. And so that can be taken either way too, either the full body or just the breath itself. And you can shift your focus from more global to more stable. I think I want to say stable, because you're sensing the breath passing over just one spot. And so the awareness, it isn't like you're getting pinpoint and but it's more that's really stabilized and steady. Because if it's more global with the body, then there's more movement with that. So it depends. You can be working with the four elements and then just stay with the breath. And that's a different character than staying at one spot. I hope this is making sense. So And for is a certain aspect of our physical embodiment, which is selected here for contemplation rather than, say, the parts of the body or the postures as we find in the full presentation of the Satipatthana. And these are the sutta references. This is Kaya Kayagata Nusati, and this is a Satipatthana. These two references here. So it's fulfilling mindfulness of the body when we're aware of anapanasati. When we have anapanasati, when we have the mindfulness of in and out breathing. Would you like to read some more?
That's why at that time, a mendicant is meditating by observing an aspect of the body, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world.
So here's so we're establishing with the breath, we're establishing ourselves in mindfulness of the body, and this is fulfilling. Anapanasati fulfills all four satipatthanas because there's as you progress through the awareness of the body, then there's a feeling arises, the feeling that's piti sukha arises, and then there's a mindfulness of the mind. It becomes more and more purified, and I'm not going to get into the how we can maybe look at the Anapanasati Sutta, but I'm just trying to show how we're kind of jumping like what would you say? Since the sutta is talking about how the mindfulness of breathing fulfills uh, the awakening factors, there's this link, which is the four foundations of mindfulness. So I just am staying with the body because it's, and because for this hour, we could have a whole course on the Anapanasati, and but for this hour, I've just kind of selected to show how the sequence evolves to full awakening. So, but would you read like maybe each paragraph at a time and we can pause?
Okay. And how bhikkhus do the four foundations of mindfulness developed and cultivated fulfill the seven enlightenment factors? Bhikkhus, on whatever occasion a bhikkhu abides contemplating the body as a body, ardent, fully aware, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world, on that occasion, unremitting mindfulness is established in him. On whatever occasion unremitting mindfulness is established in a practitioner, on that occasion the mindfulness of enlightenment factor is aroused in them. And they develop it, and by development, it comes to fulfillment in them.
So mindfulness of the body is the first tetrad of the Anapanasati Sutta. And so it appears that one can just with mindfulness of the body can activate the other enlightenment factors. And usually there's if you've been working with the unremittent mindfulness of the breathing, you're probably likely to be going into the further tetrads of feeling and mind. And so I think there's like a depth, it can get deeper and deeper as you're working with this. And there's the development of these factors that happen and the mindfulness awakening factor, if we've activated that and the next one, which we'll get into in a second, this is what we can actively work with, the first two enlightenment factors. But working with the foundations of mindfulness, we're activating or developing. It's like what was that Trina was talking about the cake, the ingredients of the cake or something like that. There's these ingredients, right? And now I'm thinking about when you're making something, you might be adding the different ingredients little bit by little bit by little bit and stirring and stirring and stirring. There's some things, maybe it's like a medicine, like some medicines that and you're combining different elements and you're doing it with a lot of care and you know I'm just trying to think of some kind of analogy, but it's all developing over time. So so the four foundations of mindfulness are, all four of them are developed with Anapanasati. But I think you can be developing also the enlightenment factors. They're not as strong, but they're developing over time. Would you read the second one?
Abiding thus mindful, she investigates and examines that state with wisdom and embarks upon a full inquiry into it. On whatever occasion, abiding thus mindful, a practitioner investigates and examines that state with wisdom and embarks upon a full inquiry into it. On that occasion, the investigation of state's enlightenment factor is aroused in her, and she develops it, and by development, it comes to fulfillment in her.
So the first one is Sati Sampajanya. Sati Sampajanya. And this is the Dhammavichaya, which is translated variously. But these two are the active components of the awakening factors. The two that we can apply our some interest and effort, some effort. So samavayamo, right effort. On these two, we're really working on unremitting mindfulness, and then everything we can do supporting throughout the day, like the Sati Sampajanya, and however we're applying our mindfulness throughout the day. And then when we get to the cushion, and if we're working with Anapanasati, then we're more likely to have this unremitted mindfulness during our meditation. And then after we have the mind is stilled and been quiet, to whatever extent there's calm in the mind, even if the mind's been chaotic, we can look back and examine how the mind is. And just look into cause and effects, like, oh, why was my mind so chaotic? Or, oh, the mind was actually quite calm. How was that? How was I staying with the breathing? So you're just starting to work with this investigation, so you can start developing it before it becomes an awakening factor. There's this curiosity and, oh, this is this is how the mind is now at the end of this period, and how was it earlier in the period? Do you have other tips on this with the Dhammavichaya developing that?
Um, although there is an activity in a direction of the mind, it should not be a strained
Right.
attending. It's something that has a relaxed, receptive quality to it, so that you're open to the wisdom that we'll see is arising, as opposed to trying to chisel it out, or really paying attention, because we're in mindfulness of the body, paying attention to the body state as we're doing this with our mindfulness. The mindfulness will support the investigation will support what arises next. And how we're holding that really does matter. And it should be a soft, attentive quality that is directed but not forceful. Does that fit with what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, so that's one aspect of it, like, our attitude and how we apply the investigation. It's kind of like a curiosity,
Yeah.
interest,
It emerges because the mindfulness is there.
but it's kind of like, okay, when I go to bed, I make sure I turn out the light, I make sure I do this, I make sure I do that. And it's just kind of like at the end of your meditation period, you remember to look back, how was it?
Mhm.
Or you see yourself getting upset and go, oh, um, that's interesting. That's whatever. Somebody said something and I see this is coming up, and is this a wholesome state? So you kind of investigate,
Yeah.
is this state of mind a wholesome or unwholesome or skillful or unskillful? This is another kind of investigation that can be done
And it's not
throughout the
for
day.
browbeating, it's for
It's just, oh, okay,
arousing wisdom and knowledge.
yeah, well, yeah, it's just kind of like, I left the burner on, so I should turn it off.
Yeah.
And it's going to take, we have electric stove, so this is a good analogy. I turn it off and I'm aware that it's hot, and even when it doesn't look hot anymore, it's still dangerous. So I have to, okay, be aware. But yeah, it's not with oh, I was so stupid to forget to turn off the burner and criticize myself, And so I see the unwholesome state and I go, okay, can I let this go? Sometimes it's hard to do it. So Dhamma is in the realm of mental states, investigating how the mind, that's one of the aspects of the Dhamma is to really investigate the mind itself. And then I've just done 3 from of the 7 from Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. This is Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, I forgot to mention, but would you read the last one?
In one who investigates and examines that state with wisdom and embarks upon a full inquiry into it, tireless energy is aroused. On whatever occasion tireless energy is aroused in a practitioner who investigates and examines that state with wisdom and embarks upon a full inquiry into it, on that occasion, the energy enlightenment factor is aroused in them and they develop it. And by development, it comes to fulfillment in them.
So this is Virya Bojanga. And so see how this is onward leading. And I think it is, if we're not wasting our energy by force, by, really like forcing ourselves to be mindful, or trying to force ourselves to investigate, or having some stress around the investigation, then this well of energy comes up. And it's onward leading. So here's the full, all this is Bhante Sujato's translation, and it doesn't have as much repetition. It's just another way of expressing it in English too. Would you mind reading this one?
And how are the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated so as to fulfill the 7 awakening factors? Whenever a mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of the body, at that time their mindfulness is established and lucid. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of mindfulness. They develop it and perfect it.
So for some reason, I don't see the unremittent aspect of it, and I didn't investigate the Pali but I think there is that element that's important, that it's un, uninterrupted. Um,
Yeah,
but it maybe that's when it becomes instead of developing it, it's actually established when the
initiated the awakening factor.
he said established and lucid. So he says it's established. So maybe that's what it is. It's firmly established. The mindfulness is firmly established, so it would be unremittent.
Do you want me to go look at the Pali or keep reading?
We can keep reading, I guess, because of the time.
As they live mindfully in this way, they investigate, explore, and inquire into that principle with wisdom. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of investigation of principles. They develop it and perfect it. As they investigate principles with wisdom in this way, their energy is roused up and unflagging. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of energy. They develop it and perfect it. Keep going.
Yeah, you can keep going.
When their energetic rapture, not of the flesh, arises, at such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of rapture. They develop it and perfect it. When the mind is full of rapture, the body and mind become tranquil. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of tranquility. They develop it and perfect it. When the body is tranquil and they feel bliss, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of immersion. They develop it and perfect it. They closely watch over the mind immersed in samadhi. At such a time, a mendicant has initiated the awakening factor of equanimity. They develop it and perfect it.
So it is all feels like this folding in, because with the establishment of mindfulness, and for it to be unremittent. I mean, they think you could get to certain of these aspects of tranquility, piti, sukha, and passaddhi, and samadhi. But this is like getting deeper and deeper. And the equanimity would be probably at the 4th jhana.
Mhm.
So I think it's just like depth and also the wisdom that's being developed over time with the observation of the mind, observation of cause and effect. Then it becomes their factor. This sometimes they're translated as factors for awakening and factors of awakening. So that's so I think this could be happening over time again and again until there's like a breakthrough, and one enters a stream, and then the breakthrough to higher levels of awakening, or maybe directly to arahantship. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
You can see that it says it initiated the awakening factor on each of them. So
Yeah.
it begins, and then they develop and perfect it.
Mhm.
So that's the difference between the awakening factor for awakening and of awakening.
And this rapture, not of the flesh, is niramisa piti, and the not of the flesh, that's a literal translation, but sometimes it's called unworldly rapture. And sometimes, but the idea is it's not dependent on sensual stimulation. Like if I have Nirvana tea, has anyone seen, there's this Nirvana teas or there's like some various things they're trying to say that it's like so blissful or heavenly or something like that. And then and then the taste of it is just gonna send me, it's not like that. It's not like that, or the perfect, the hot tub, the spa, people go to these spas to get, just like they have scents and they have the, like the hot tubs and they have, or a sauna or something like that. People massaging, you pay all this money to get all, all this. And so they think this is where their happiness or their rapture is going to come from. Or they take drugs. People take drugs. Isn't there? No, ecstasy. There's a drug. I don't know if there was a drug. I don't know.
Yep, there's a drug.
It's if it's still that some people I knew were taking it at some time. It was like quite dangerous. But this is not that kind of rapture. It's dependent on the mind has become so pure, and that's so free of the defilements. It temporarily, if enter a certain states of samadhi, and that this because there's no defilement in that state of mind. This is a rapture that's not dependent on contact at the sense gates. You pulled away from the sense gates and you pulled away from the coarse defilements. And it's not like you're awakened quite yet, but you get a taste of what it is to be free. And then this rapture arises. And then that settles down. And then it's even a more beautiful state of passaddhi, peacefulness. And so it's interesting to me that this joy, this rapture, and this beautiful, peaceful state, these are both factors for and of awakening. And so, um,
And it isn't that you don't sense the rapture, it's that it's not a sensual engagement
right.
that is that the rapture is arising from.
So,
You're aware
yeah,
of the bliss.
yeah. So happiness is an essential element in awakening.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting to point out. Now, back to the real world. This is extract I wanted to pull in because before we get on the cushion, there's we need to keep our precepts, at least 5. And so this is a how it's just an extract, but there's a simile of the Nagas developing in the streams, and they start out in like small streams, and then they go into large pools, and they develop and they keep developing over time. And it says, and then they're so large they go out to the ocean. I said, in the same way, it is, so they're dependent on the waterways to, I think that's the simile. I'll have to look at it again. I just took the extract out because dependence on virtue, established on virtue, having developed and pursued the 7 factors for awakening, that a monk attains to greatness, prosperity in terms of mental qualities. So I'm just pulling in how the sila is very important. So that's just an extract to show that. Maybe I'll pull the whole sutta in another time. I was just trying from memory, trying to remember the simile. So this is another extract to show just the Pali words. So awakening factor of mindfulness is sati, sati sampajanya. So maybe we should, yeah, let's see. We could just read this, I think. Would you?
Starting at the beginning in the
Yeah,
same
and then, yeah.
In the same way, it is independence on virtue, established on virtue, having developed and pursued the 7 factors of awakening, that a practitioner attains to greatness and prosperity in terms of mental qualities.
That's fine. I meant the next one. We could just
Oh.
read through it, but just to emphasize,
Starting with they develop.
yeah, they develop.
They develop the awakening factor of mindfulness, sati, which relies on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripens as letting go. They develop the awakening
So
factor.
that's sati sampajanya. So just read the
Sati Sam.
the bold of the
Oh, Sati Sambo Jangam.
sati sambojangam. I'll get into my stuff. Yeah, okay.
They develop the awakening factor of investigation of principles, Dhammavicaya Sambojangam. The awakening factor of energy, Virya Sambojangam. The awakening factor of rapture, Piti Sambojangam. The awakening factor of tranquility, Pasadi Sambojangam. The awakening factor of immersion, Samadhi Sambojangam. The awakening factor of equanimity, Upekkha, Upekkha Sambojangam.
So
That's how the 7 awakening factors, when developed and cultivated, fulfill knowledge and freedom.
sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So we can open this up now for, I'm gonna close the screen share. And we can open it for, I'm gonna put it into gallery view, and if people have any questions or comments on this, hopefully this is understandable enough. But I think the main point here is that I mean, it seems like a lot of teachers emphasize mindfulness, and this is part of the reason why, is because it's a starting point, but we can't neglect the rest of it. So, any comments or questions or anything you wanted to add?
From the chat, there was a comment about how the mindfulness of breathing integrated within the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that it really, it gives you both the samatha and the vipassana.
Mhm.
And so it's not so much that there's a clear distinction, they do flow into each other, is how I take the comment. And then also that we had looked at Hiriotapa, I think last week, and other weeks as well. And that there's this awareness acknowledgement as opposed to becoming in regards to it. And if I'm paraphrasing your comments poorly, please chime in and make them your own.
Yeah, so that, yeah, it is very much integrated practice, and there is the the wisdom element. That's why us investigating throughout the day, and after we, the mind has gotten to some amount of stillness and we're exiting our meditation to investigate. It's a lighter level than when, it'll get deeper and deeper as we go along, as we progress. But yeah, we're just initiating, I guess you could say, as they say, that practice. So does anyone have a comment they would or question? Scott, looks like you have to unmute yourself.
Can you make it full screen?
Can I unmute him?
There we go.
There we go.
Hi. I just have a question on sort of the physical manifestations of PT. I've heard it described, you have tingling and all this, and I was just kind of wondering if that's an integral quality of it, or PT can manifest without the physical manifestations.
Well, PT is more of the physical, and the sukha is more of the mental. So
Okay.
there'll be some, or even like you might, when you're getting more in touch with the body, um you'll feel what happiness feels like.
Hmm.
Even throughout the day, like if somebody has done something nice, or you have a appreciative joy because someone has you've witnessed somebody doing something kind to somebody else, and then you feel this happiness in your body. So if you're sensitive to that kind of uplift, and so it doesn't have to be, some people have, it's more subtle, and some people it's more powerful, and some people it's like it's almost disturbing because it's so strong. So but the tingling, you can feel that, even, just the happiness that's not associated with like a sensual pleasure. It's
Hmm.
more of a, you're having a mental happiness because of something wholesome and good, you know.
Hmm.
So, even if somebody's being kind to me, or to somebody else, or I've done, this is a good one, when you're rejoicing in your own goodness because uh you've done something good.
Hmm.
And so you feel happy, like even if it's just something small, like somebody was struck, you could see they're heading towards the door and they've got things in their arm, and you just go and you know open the door for them, and so then there's this nice contact. So there's this uplift and
Hmm.
you know happiness, and that's going to happen when the mind, if you're sitting on the cushion, you'll feel, yeah, it'll be a physical feeling of happiness in the body.
Hmm.
And it can be tingling, it can be really energetic. And some people, they have a physical, they maybe shake, and then all kinds of things can happen with PT, but um, yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be the tingling. But that is what I think it's probably a very common thing that people experience.
Okay.
I've felt, like, it doesn't necessarily mean you're in jhana or anything, but I felt like a kind of effervescent feeling,
Hmm.
kind of like very fine bubbly,
Yeah.
like effervescence in the body.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what people would think tingling was.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's just like so it could be just a
Languaging.
language, yeah, language issue too.
Mhm.
And they don't necessarily have to be in jhana or anything to experience that.
Thank you. That was helpful.
You're welcome. But it's so beautiful that happiness is an essential part of the path. Anyone else have a comment or question or? Nora, yes.
I have, I met the Anapanasati Sutta a long time ago, and when I went back to it then, a less long time ago,
Mhm.
I began to see and reading Buddhadasa that actually all the steps to and factors of awakening and the four foundations of mindfulness, if I'm understanding Buddhadasa correctly, and the four tetrads are integrated within the 16 steps in Anapanasati. So they're not separate at all. So that's sort of my current point of view. So I was surprised to read that one paragraph that said it's kind of the one which leads to the other. The Anapanasati then leads to the four foundations of mindfulness, which leads to the seven factors of enlightenment. And again, I also, from my understanding and my current point of view, the seven factors of enlightenment are also woven throughout the 16 steps in the Anapanasati. So I was just wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
Oh, like we were saying, I think I was kind of indicating, I'm not as eloquent as Venerable Buddhadasa was. And he's, master at, yeah, teaching about Dhamma. But yeah, so it's they're emerging and they're developing, but they're not perfected. So while you're working with one, like you could see how it was in sequence. I'm doing a Anapanasati, so I'm developing mindfulness of all four foundations of mindfulness, but it's starting out with the body and with the tetrads, that's a little bit more sequential. You can get into like it won't be as powerful if you're not starting with the body. You could get into the weight or the feeling without really fully developing the first tetrad, but it's not going to be as I mean, these things can emerge, but they're not really well practiced or developed until you've gotten that real, you start out with the body and then the feeling and then mind and then the mental, those aspects of actually awakening in the fourth tetrad. But it's like, I think I love Trina's analogy of the cake. You have to be, or maybe it's like baking bread, and then that might be a good one. You start out with a sponge. I've used to make bread, and so you have to start out with the yeast, and you get the yeast activated, and then you put it in some a little bit of flour and water, and and then you keep carefully adding more and more flour and other ingredients, and you fold it, so you keep adding more ingredients, but they're all like starting to work together to make the bread, and some of it's your effort, and some of it's the yeast, and some of it's I had to mention gluten, but the stretchiness of the gluten, and so there's all these different, and the yeast needs the honey in order to have good fuel to get all the rapid growth going, and they're putting out I don't know, some oxygen, I guess, while they're and so it's this complex process, and so it's all developing over time, and then you end up with bread after you put it at a certain point you put it in the oven. That's when it's really you've really gotten it, things perfected to the point where it's ready to bake.
But I really like that, Aya, because instead of like freaking out over like if you're like a rigid or sort of linear person, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 2,
Yeah,
and
it's
all
not
the
like that.
rules. It's not like that. There's the mystery of the yeast and the mystery of just what happens, like that sort of letting go. So that's a really good,
Yeah,
like my mind listens to this stuff and I start freaking out like, oh my God, did I do it in the right, whatever I get. And that's silly. That's not helpful at all.
Well,
yeah, so it is an unfolding, and it is like I was saying, the sila is really essential, and the first two, the mindfulness and investigation, these are the elements that we can actively work with, and then other things will arise. And it does, like I was saying, like if you're working with Anapanasati, some of the elements of the seven bojjhangas are going to come up as you're working with the tetrads. If you enter jhana, you're going to have some of those elements, and then after you exit jhana, you're going to be in a, it isn't, that happens often in the suttas where it really does seem like A, B, C, D, E. You could look at the Noble Eightfold Path. They have the starting out with a right view, but you have to have the right view in order to go in the right direction. Because then you could, if you start out with wrong view, then you can have, you know, wrong intention, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong life. I mean, so you have to start out with the mindfulness, but they're all developing over time, and it does seem like a sequence, but what occurs to me is often the Buddha is like very sequential, and this is a way of memorizing these elements. So and then you start out with like really working with Anapanasati, say, and then you start, I think part of it is also to be aware of what's the direction your practice is going. And you say, oh, okay, I've been working with my sila, and now my awareness is greater because I'm aware of when my sila is maybe going off a little bit, and my awareness of what's rising in my mind is, and so as we go along, these things are developing and getting stronger, but we have to be aware of the various elements to see that we're on track. Is this making sense? Because I like Scott was talking about the piti, okay? And so what is this feeling in my body, this happiness that's occurring? It's because I'm having mudita, say. Okay, so, or I'm sitting on my cushion and my mind has become temporarily free of unwholesome mental states, and just sitting there, I'm happy. So this is like a sign, it's like, oh, yeah, things are working. Or, oh, I look at the bread and the bread is rising. Wow, great. Or, it's been sitting there for all this time and it's not rising. What's going on with that? And this batch of bread isn't so good. Like you bake the bread and it's like a brick, It's like something I did, so, I need to work with the ingredients. I've got to see, maybe I didn't need it enough, you know? So you're kind of investigating as you're going out along, and it's just, oh, okay, my mind is very chaotic. What's up with that? It's, okay. And then just because of busyness of life, okay, just that's how it is, or oh, because I said something really cruel to my friend, and wow, it's just like I can't stop thinking about it, and it's like, okay, this is cause and effect. So you have to be aware of the different factors as you go along. What's going on? Is my mind, like you're checking for your mindfulness, you're remembering to investigate things, and then you may be doing this, and then you're feeling very energetic. And you go, oh, I'm developing the awakening factor of Virya. This is arising. Now it's arising. It's like the bread rising, the bread. And then, yeah, so I hope that's helpful. It's not, it's more like the cake or the bread or something like that you have to, and then if you're a baker, like for me, I was trying to experiment and get whole grain breads and how to get something that was actually palatable when I was baking. So you keep experimenting with the ingredients and how much of this and that you put in. But it's more your observation as you're going on along. Yeah, they're all very much integrated, and what would be also like the rivers, right? If the river is flowing downstream and there's other currents that are, feeding into it as you go along. So the rivers get more and more strong. That's that Naga simile. That's can you pull up? I think it was
We're at time, but
Oh, we're
I
at
can
time?
pull something up if you need me to. Sure.
okay, we're at time. Well, we'll look at the Naga simile next time, because that is that stream. The streams fill up, and as the Nagas are growing, they have to swim downstream and get into a larger pool. And finally, they get strong enough where they can go out into the ocean. So I guess we can stop. And so it seems like we got to a point where it's understanding of yeah, it's difficult for me to explain, but it seems like I've done a good enough job for now. Well, thank you all for your kind attention. It's good seeing you all. So we're going to close with homage to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. If you care to join us. And you can stay on for a little bit afterwards if you have other comments or questions. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagawa Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivade Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sangham Namami. So thank you all on YouTube for joining. We're going to, if I can, how do I close this thing out here?